Democracy is the predominant form of government in the contemporary world, but it has also faced many challenges. This, however, has made democracy even more progressive because, unlike a problem, a challenge carries within it an opportunity of overcoming it. There are three types of challenges faced by democratic countries comprising 1/3 of the world: foundational, challenge of expansion, and deepening of democracy. Foundational challenge is meant for the non-democratic countries of the world. The foundational challenge of making a transition to democracy and instituting it requires bringing down the existing non-democratic regime. It involves keeping the military away from controlling the government and establishing a sovereign and functional state. Another challenge that most of the established democracies face is the challenge of expansion. Countries like India and the United States of America face this challenge. It is important to apply the standard principles of democracy across all regions, different social groups, and various institutions, and to ensure that most of the decisions made remain within democratic control. In a country like India, greater power is to be given to the local government to ensure unity within the people and make decentralization of power more effective. The extension of the federal system to all the units of federation and the inclusion of women and minorities is another important aspect of the challenge of expansion. The third challenge is deepening of democracy, which involves strengthening of practices and institutions of democracy through the control and participation of the people. It also attempts at reducing the control and influence of the rich and powerful in making governmental decisions. Every challenge of democracy is linked with the possibility of reforms. Thus, broad guidelines like legal and political practice and legislative measures can be kept in mind while devising ways for political reforms. Reforms through legal ways have its contributions and implications. Laws must be made to empower people to carry out democratic reforms. If laws are skillfully devised, wrong political practices can be discouraged and can help ban undesirable things. The Right to Information Act is a successful example of a law that has enabled people to carry out democratic reforms. This act helps control corruption by imposing strict penalties, and it also allows people to act as watchdogs of democracy. Democratic reforms can be carried out by political parties, pressure groups, and above all, the people. However, legal constitutional changes by themselves cannot overcome challenges to a democracy. There are times where laws, if not formulated strategically, may prove to be counterproductive. Laws like banning people with more than 2 children from contesting in panchayat elections have had negative results, with denial of democratic opportunity to the poor and women. Political practice is another avenue for democratic reform. Strengthening democratic practice and improving the participation of ordinary citizens in political practice would be beneficial. In addition to this, legislative measures that rely on citizens' organizations, democratic movements, and media are effective and stepping stones to success. In time, challenges will vary, and so will the reforms, as they can never be the same throughout. However, these broad guidelines would help in creating ways towards political or democratic reform. Some of the major challenges to the Indian democracy are casteism, communalism, political violence, and corruption. Casteism is a challenge that plays an important role in polity. To protect the interests of the backward castes, many political parties like the AIADMK, DMK, and BSP have come together. Another negative impact on Indian politics is the challenge of communalism. This has led to fear, intolerance, and also given rise to pressure groups like the VHP. The challenge of political violence has assumed serious dimensions, leading to the growth of terrorism. Corruption is another major challenge to Indian democracy. This challenge is related to the criminal records and personal possessions of the politicians. However, mandatory filing of an affidavit with details of personal possessions and criminal records, if any, have led to transparency. Apart from this, money, muscle power, lack of election ethics, and insufficient representation of women and minorities are common challenges faced by the Indian democracy. There are two case studies that reveal some of the challenges faced by the country. Case Study 1. Doctors' absenteeism. All rural villages are supposed to have primary healthcare centers. A survey conducted in Uttar Pradesh revealed that there were no doctors available at these health centers. These doctors had their own private practice in towns and visited the villages once or twice a month. The poor villagers have to travel long distances and pay huge fees to avail of the same facilities when required. What do you think the government should do in such a scenario? The government could make it mandatory for doctors to live in the villages and cancel their services if they do not adhere to the rules. Surprise raids should be conducted to assess the health centers, and the village panchayat could be given more authority to manage the situation in the villages. Let's take a look at the next case. Case Study 2. Political funding. Almost all candidates who have contested elections have grand homes and a fleet of cars costing crores of rupees. The projection to most people is that only the wealthy get a chance to contest and fight elections. Most of these parties are funded by big business and very rich people. The fear is that money seems to have overshadowed the voice of the poor in the Indian democracy. Can anything be done about this? There are many reforms that can take place to avoid this situation. For example, government auditors examine the financial accounts of all the political parties and make it public. State funding for elections should be set up so the aspiring candidates get funded for their elections. Citizens could also be encouraged to help in government funding and in return could enjoy tax benefits. When there are challenges, there are also many possible reforms. Commonly, democracy is a form of government in which rulers are elected by the people. But over a period of time, thinkers have added that the rulers elected by the people take all the major decisions. Elections should be held in a free and fair manner with equal choice and opportunity to all. This choice must lead to a government limited by basic rules of the Constitution and citizens' rights. Let's now redefine democracy and widen its scope based on the influence of global concepts and some socio-economic changes. Democratic rights should not be limited to voting, contesting, and forming political parties. Democracy should grant some social and economic rights to the citizens. The very spirit of power sharing should be extended to power sharing between governments and social groups. Modern democracy should respect the voice of the minority with the majority. The democracy should also extend its scope from mere government and its activities to eliminating discrimination of all kinds. Democracy is also the best form of government on the basis of accountability, consultation and discussion, accommodates, and social diversities. It ensures dignity of the individual and allows room for correction. Thus, we can redefine good democracy as a form of government in which rulers are elected by the people and which ensures that every citizen participates in the decision-making process directly or indirectly through elected representatives in a free and fair manner.